Hello and welcome. A very good morning to all our viewers. You're watching the newspaper show here on Times Now and I'm Poonam Burde. Over the next half an hour, we'll get you all those news stories that are making headlines in the newspapers this Sunday morning. Let's begin with the Times of India. The biggest story, of course, is about Pakistan and its admission that finally they have now come out and said publicly after years of India claiming it that Dawood is in Pakistan. That's the big headline in the Times of India this Sunday morning. Pakistan has imposed sanctions on Dawood, Hafiz, Azhar, Lakhvi and 84 others. This comes as the FATF is mounting pressure on Islamabad. This move is seen as a bid to avoid FATF blacklist. That's the big story in the Sunday Times this morning. In an apparent attempt to avoid blacklisting by the Paris-based Financial Action Task Force, Pakistan has issued a fresh notification prescribing 88 chiefs and members of terrorist groups, including the 1993 Mumbai blast mastermind Dawood Ibrahim and LET commander and key 2611 accused Zakir Rahman Lakhvi. This is in compliance with the new list issued by the UNSC recently. This means that Islamabad has finally accepted Mumbai blast mastermind is in Karachi. Dawood, Hafiz, Masood Azhar and Lakhvi are in Pakistan. That's the admission coming in from Islamabad. Notification that has now been put out by Islamabad mentions 1993 Mumbai blast mastermind and India's most wanted Ibrahim's White House address in Karachi and 2 other properties in the city in what Indian officials see as Islamabad's first acknowledgement that he is in Pakistan. Now, India after this is expected to press on Dawood's inclusion in SRO to demand he be named under Pakistan's Anti-Terror Act as individual terrorist along with Zakir Rahman Lakhvi, who is the key accused in the 2611 Mumbai attacks case. Pakistan's sanctions need to be followed by prosecution and verifiable measures to restrict funding is what Indian sources are now saying, citing the example of Hafiz Saeed's porous house detention. We have seen the sham action that Pakistan seems to be taking against all these terror masterminds who are flourishing on Pakistani soil. India, of course, is now going to push harder and seek sanctions on Dawood Ibrahim, Hafiz Saeed, Masood Azhar, Lakhvi and several other terrorists who are being sheltered by the administration in Pakistan. That's the big story in the Sunday Times. Of course, we're talking about the pandemic, the lockdown and how we move forward. Don't curb transport of goods and people is what the centre has now told states. We are moving towards unlocking India, towards economic revival, and it's very, very important that we do keep our state borders open is what the centre has now told states. Home Secretary Ajit Bhalla is quoted in the Times of India. He says, it has been reported that local level restrictions and movements are being imposed by various districts and states. Such restrictions are creating problems in interstate movement of goods and services and are impacting the supply chain, resulting in disruption of economic activities and employment. So that's the big story coming in. This is a directive from the central government to all states to ensure that their state borders are open. There is absolutely no curb on movement of goods as well as people. This is to ensure that economic revival is on track as far as India bouncing back in the wake of COVID-19 and the subsequent lockdown is concerned. The government is also going to invest 65,000 crore in 200 economic zones. This plan has now been prepared, we're given to understand. This is going to happen over the next 5 years. This is according to the proposal that has been made under the National Master Plan for providing multi-nodal connectivity. Roads, railways, shipping and civil aviation ministries have prepared a connectivity roadmap for these zones, such as food and agro zones, fishing and defence clusters, electronic, textile and pharmaceutical parks. This, of course, is to ensure that India's economy is back on track. We're jump-starting all of these economic activities that have seen slump in the last couple of months. This is to ensure the 65,000 crore in over 200 economic zones is to ensure that India gets a jump start in that particular thing. We're also talking about COVID. The case count of India has now topped 3 million. Unfortunately, on Saturday is when India witnessed the biggest spike. A surge of 70,488 cases was witnessed in just 24 hours. That's the highest single-day spike India has witnessed so far. The main cities or the states that have been worst affected, of course, Maharashtra still tops that list. 14,492 cases have come to the fore in the last 24 hours. It's followed by Andhra, which is now seeing an uptick over 10,000 cases. Karnataka also sees over 7,000 cases. Tamil Nadu and UP are in the 5,000 range. Unfortunately, 917 deaths have also been reported in the last 24 hours. India is now testing more. That's the silver lining that is coming in. It's a milestone. India has tested over 10 lakh a day. It's crossed a significant milestone of testing 10 lakh samples in a day to detect COVID-19, with 23,836 samples tested on Friday. The positivity for the day dropped to 6.8%. This is the silver lining, given with the fact that the recovery rate is also on the higher side. That is only giving hope to India, as the number of cases, the number of fresh infections are unfortunately only growing with every single day. Moving on to what China and India are doing along the line of actual control. Remember, the two countries have been engaged in military-level talks as far as the June skirmish is concerned at the line of actual control, unfortunately, in which 20 of our brave Jawans lost their lives in Galwan. China, unfortunately, has refused to budge. They're building infrastructure along the LAC, which is the latest bit coming in. China is showing no intent of disengaging from the troop confrontation in eastern Ladakh, while further digging in its heels by continuing to build roads, bridges, helipads and other military infrastructure along the line of actual control to back its troops at the actual face-off sites. We're given to understand that forces have been asked to import curb easing. The armed forces say that they will be forced to seek waivers for certain products in the negative arms import list if the domestic arms industry fails to deliver. Officers from 3 wings have now come and said that the negative list was a welcome step, of course, to boost the Desi defense industrial base. However, operational military readiness cannot be sacrificed at the altar of indigenization. That's the quote coming in from one of the officers. Remember, India is working towards reducing our dependence on imports, increasing our exports, and Make in India push is what the Prime Minister has been pushing for. It also is in line with his Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign, so to say. These are the big stories coming in from the Sunday Times. Moving on to what the Navbharat Times holds for its readers this Sunday morning. The biggest one, of course, is Pakistan's admission. Pakistan ne pehli baar kaboola, Karachi mein rehta hai Dawood Ibrahim. We did see that was a big story in the Times of India as well. Even the Navbharat Times talks about that exact admission finally coming in from Pakistan. The other big story is what happened in Delhi yesterday. IS आतंकी गिरफ्तार, दहलने से बची दिल्ली, अयोध्या में मंदिर भूमि पूजन का लेना था बदला. This is the plot that was unraveled yesterday in the national capital after one of the IS operatives was arrested along with 2 pressure cooker IEDs that he had built at home. This, of course, was to take revenge against the grand Ram temple that is going to be built in Ayodhya. It also has a small blurb on the Sushant Singh Rajput case and what exactly is happening in that particular matter. Sushant की पड़ोसी का खुलासा, मौत से पहले की रात पर क्या हुआ, इसकी डिटेल्स नवभारत टाइम्स ने दिए हैं इस संडे मॉर्निंग को. इट ऑल्सो टॉक्स अबाउट द तबलीगी जमात एंड व्हाट एग्जैक्टली ट्रांसपायर्ड. हाई कोर्ट ने कहा है बली का बकरा बने जमात में शामिल विदेशी. देयर वर सेवरल पीपल हु वर पार्ट ऑफ द तबलीगी जमात इन द नेशनल कैपिटल, मोस्ट ऑफ whom were the cause of the spread of COVID-19 across the country, several of whom had come from foreign countries. The court is now, the Bombay High Court, in fact, has now said that they were made scapegoats, unfortunately, in this entire matter. This is what the Navbharat Times holds this morning. Moving on to the Economic Times. The Economic Times comes out with its magazine, as you know, every Sunday. The cover story is about the Indian Railways. The pandemic has thrown metro rail projects across the country into disarray, calling into question their ability to meet repayment obligations and massive amounts of debt. Now, metro services across most cities have been shut. The central government nor the state government has been open to opening up public transport. This, of course, is to keep a lid on the spread of COVID-19. That's the cover story in the Economic Times. The big story, of course, like the Times of India, was the directive from the centre to the states that there should be no blockage of movement of goods or people across state lines, across state borders. The arrest in Delhi of the IS operative also finds mention in the Economic Times. Arrest averts major terror strike in Delhi is what the police have said. This, of course, is a big shot in the arm for the Delhi Police Special Cell. Another piece of information coming in the Economic Times is about Jammu and Kashmir. J&K parties resolved to fight for special status. Political parties have unanimously resolved to fight for restoration of the special status of Jammu and Kashmir as it existed before August 5, 2019. They claim that the measures taken were spitefully short-sighted and grossly unconstitutional. That's the stand coming in from several parties in Jammu and Kashmir. They now want to fight the centre on the abrogation of Article 370. Another piece of information that finds mention in the Economic Times magazine is about Trump. WeChat users sued to block Trump's ban of messaging application. Now remember, much like on the lines of India, United States also banned several mobile phone applications that were linked to China. Now a group of WeChat users have asked a federal judge to block the Trump administration from imposing a ban on what they say appears to be all users of the Chinese messaging app in the US. This, of course, had happened over national security concerns. Against democracy, my lord, is also what finds mention in the Economic Times. This, of course, is about the case of Prashant Bhushan, the contempt case in which he was found guilty by the Supreme Court. He has now been, of course, given time to rethink. The Supreme Court has asked him to show some remorse, apologize, and maybe they will reconsider the quantum that he now faces. These are the big stories that we're getting to you from the three top newspapers, which is the Times of India, the Navbharat Times and the Economic Times. Moving on to what the city editions hold this Sunday morning. We, of course, are only getting you two city editions this morning, which is Kolkata and Delhi, because all the other metros, unfortunately, will not get their newspapers this morning. It was Ganesh Chaturthi yesterday. So let's begin with what the national capital holds for its viewers, for its readers this Sunday morning. Of course, the biggest story is about the arrest that took place in the national capital. The special cell of Delhi police arrested an alleged IS operative named Abdul Yusuf Khan, 36-year-old. He claimed to have seized improvised explosive devices packed in a pressure cooker from him. Sharon's now joining us for more on this. Sharon, we're given to understand that this, of course, comes as a big shot in the arm for the Delhi police and its operations in the national capital. They're now tracking his whereabouts, his linkages to the IS network in the country and, of course, abroad. We're given to understand that he was part of the Khorasan module and was in touch with the commander of the IS directly.
Good morning, Poonam. Yes, this is, of course, the biggest story in the national capital, and a commendable job has, in fact, been done by the special cell of Delhi police. In the wee hours of Saturday morning, that is yesterday, they had arrested this alleged IS operative, and also with him, they seized about 2 pressure cookers that were packed with IEDs, and he was, in fact, arrested near Buddha Jayanti Park. He was on his way to Karol Bagh, is what the police have been telling us. And he was on his way to Karol Bagh. That is when there was a fire of exchange between the alleged IS operative and the police, and eventually he was in fact arrested. The IEDs were also defused by the disposal squad, bomb disposal squad of NSG. Now, like you mentioned, yes, the investigation is on. The preliminary investigation, the primary, of course, has been suggesting that he was in fact in touch with the IS entities through web for past 5 years now. So he was in touch with them. He was planning a lone wolf attack on Independence Day, but he was not able to do so. So then he was looking for an opportunity to go ahead and do something similar. So clearly, but this special cell of police have in fact arrested him.
Absolutely, this arrest is going to be crucial to find answers about the network, about the module that is unfortunately functioning in India. That, of course, this is going to lead to a bigger crackdown on ISIS operatives in India. For the moment, Sharon, thank you for joining us. Moving on to what Kolkata holds for its readers this morning. Now, the biggest information is that the panel has now fixed bed charges for COVID patients at pre-pandemic rate. This decision has come in from the West Bengal Clinical Establishment Commission, which has asked private hospitals to levy the same bed charges from COVID patients that existed from before March 1st, 2020, when the pandemic was still to spread in the state and, of course, the rest of the country as well. Sheshi now joins us for more on this. Sheshi, we're given to understand that the Commission has also directed hospitals to not turn away any patients if they're unable to pay that particular deposit amount.
Well, that's right, Poonam. This health body that was formed by the West Bengal government in 2016 has been hearing multiple cases of lapses in private hospitals as well as government hospitals where patients have been turned away for not being able to pay a deposit amount demanded by these hospitals. The recent case being in this month, where a private hospital refused to admit the patient after demanding a 3 lakh rupees deposit, which the son was unable to pay at the spot. And the allegation is that the lady died inside the ambulance outside the gate of the hospital. So while the commission has been hearing such cases time and again here in West Bengal, they have decided to fix the COVID bed rates,
Right.
as well as also ensure that the deposit amount that is asked from the patient party isn't skyrocketing, and no one is turned away without given any treatment.
Absolutely, that's good news coming in for the people of Kolkata and of course the rest of the state who do come to the capital city to find themselves, to get themselves treated, especially in the time of this COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you, Shreyashi, for joining us with those details. Moving on to some sporting action now. Of course, let's begin with football. Sevilla's Grand Europa affair continues. Lukaku deflected Diego Carlos's overhead kick. That gave Sevilla a 3-2 win for the record 6th title. That, of course, brings some cheer to football fans. We're also talking about the Champions League. Old money meets new money in a final under the most peculiar of circumstances. Now, we do know that several of these football games have been on, this of course with utmost precautions that have been taken in the view of the pandemic. Now, the public stance from the Bayern Munich and Paris Saint-Germain players is that they are now used to the circumstances of no fans, of the extra security, of the sanitization process that takes place, all of this. The players are now claiming that they're used to this, but those who played in the Champions League final before have been privately discussing differences. Some of them are not okay with how these games have been going on. After an unprecedented suspension of competition, pandemic enforced changes to the format and a switch of location for the final. The Champions League will conclude on Sunday, 425 days after the first game was played, which is, in the given circumstances, unnatural. Either Paris Saint-Germain will pick up the European Cup for the first time, or Bayern Munich will become 6-time winners of the continent's premier competition. Karishma is now joining us. Karishma, of course, the fact that these matches are on has brought some cheer to the fans, but the players themselves seem to not be happy with how it's all going.
Well, it's absolutely, Poonam. It is a different experience for the players, especially today, the Champions League final, Paris Saint-Germain versus Bayern Munich. And like you said, it is, a very, very important final, especially for the football fans who will be watching the Champions League final. But yes, the players have been discussing these differences in, private. There have been a lot of differences in football, how it started after a COVID-induced break in terms of empty stadiums, in terms of, without fans and, no handshakes, no hugs. And it is a completely different way of playing football now. But Champions League final is going to hopefully induce some of that, love of football back in the players as well.
Right, absolutely, Karishma. Those differences are there. We're also going to see IPL that is going to come up in a few months from now. Whether our players, whether cricketing players also have similar issues, well, of course, remains to be a matter of just time will tell what really happens. But for the moment, Karishma, thank you for joining us with those details. Moving on to what global headlines are this Sunday morning. The biggest one, of course, is from the US presidential race. There are months to go, just a few months before US votes for a new president. Donald Trump and Joe Biden are the two contestants. Democrats are seeing racism in how top Republicans say Kamala. Now, Kamala Harris has been picked as the running mate by Democrats. She is the running mate of Joe Biden. Supporters claim that Trump and Pence have been mispronouncing her name to signal that she is different. That's the big story coming in from the United States. Meanwhile, US House has also passed a vote by mail bill which has been opposed by Trump. This is, we're given to understand, will come up for perusal of the US House. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris greet Hindus on Ganesh Chaturthi. This is also in the run-up to the presidential election. Ganesh Chaturthi was yesterday. Indian Americans have, of course, been cheering the Democrat nomination for Kamala Harris as the vice president nominee. We're also talking about the pandemic and the stats globally. The World Health Organization has now said that they're hoping that the pandemic will end in less than 2 years. This even as the global toll of cases of COVID-19 have now topped 8 lakh. How does coronavirus spread at a concert? Germans are trying to find out via a live show. Germany held a pop concert on Saturday to see how those attending would spread coronavirus. This, of course, is an experiment only to find what exactly happens, how it can be transmitted, and what happens if public events like these are they start taking place, and how the state administrations, how governments, how countries will have to deal with that. That, of course, is the big story as far as the COVID-19 fight is concerned. Across the globe, China has approved human trial for vaccine grown in insect cells. Now, there is a race for vaccines for COVID-19. We in India are also seeing at least 3 of them are in different stages of trial. Russia has now said that they do have one on the anvil. They have approved one. The production is in process. China has now said that they've approved human trial for a vaccine that is grown in insect cells. Europe's virus surge, less deadly than the first infection wave, is good news coming in for Europe because they are now witnessing a second wave of the infection. COVID infections are surging again in Europe, unfortunately, but thankfully this surge seems to be less deadlier. This strain seems to be less deadlier than the first one. This is what Global Headlines holds this Sunday morning. Moving on to the world of entertainment and what that holds for its readers. This is, of course, from the Delhi Times. The big story that they are also reporting today is about actor Karan Takar's false COVID positive report, which unfortunately led to a 48-hour ordeal for him. He says, my COVID test in Mumbai wasn't done properly. I kept asking the person who came for the test to take a throat swab, but he said what he had done was enough. That resulted into a false COVID positive, and that led to panic among the actor and his family. There is also a blurb on Sushant Singh Rajput, where now Delhi Times is reporting that Sushant's death has inspired film titles. Titles include Sushant, Sushant Singh Rajput biography, and the unsolved murder mystery Rajput. Rejected 2 titles based on Vikas Dubey is what they're saying. People called Vikas Dubey's death in an encounter by the U people as filmy. And now producers are planning films and web series on him. A source from Producers Association says the titles we've received are Most Wanted Vikas Dubey and several others. So there are films that are being talked of, not just on Sushant Singh Rajput, the mystery around his death and what exactly happened, but also on the dreaded gangster Vikas Dubey, who was gunned down by the UP police a couple of weeks ago. With that, it's a wrap from me on the newspaper show, but news and updates continue here on Times Now. Do stay with us.